Hey, this is WhyBeAre with Google Chrome. And about a month ago, a new vehicle was revealed for BeamNG.drive called the CHERRIER VIVACE. And yes, that is actually how you pronounce it. How do I know that's how you pronounce it? Because if you scroll down enough, there's this little PS section that says, hey, this is how you pronounce the name of the vehicle. Also, these are not the ways to pronounce the vehicle. It is not the VIVACE or the VIVACE or even the VIVACE. The correct way to say it is
VIVACE.
There you go. Although kind of ironically, I see like these automated voice things like this are often just wrong. So it's kind of ironic that they use that to say this is the correct way to pronounce the name of the vehicle. Plus, this is not the same spelling as the name of the vehicle. So it's just kind of funny to me that that's how it ended up happening, but that's how you're supposed to say it, officially. Is that what I'm gonna say? No, I call everything a gravel. You really think I'm gonna say the name right? Not a chance. Now, I don't know what the nickname of the vehicle is gonna be yet. I just know eventually I will have one because every vehicle seems to get a nickname from me. Now, here's the main problem with the vehicle. It's been almost a month and the vehicle is still not out yet, and I wanna drive it now. So, we are gonna make a knockoff version of the vehicle in Automation, the car company tycoon game. Then, we'll export that car to BeamNG.drive and we'll be driving the knockoff before the official version actually comes out. So we're gonna make this car in the sandbox mode, and it's gonna be a fresh design from the ground up. The first thing we need to decide on is the body style. And if we look at the official blog post, it says this is a 2020 model year compact hatchback. So let's make the year 2020 to match, and then we go over to the body type, and we're gonna hide everything that is not a hatchback and see what hatchback options we have. So we have a 2009, a 2005, and a 2003, and anything older than that just looks too old. So looking at 2003, 2005, and 2009, yeah, as expected, the 2009 does look the closest to the vehicle we're trying to clone, so we'll start with that one. Next up, we need to decide on the panel material. Now, I would expect this car to use steel. It could, however, use some aluminum as well, because aluminum is being used more and more in modern cars. Like the F-150 uses a lot of aluminum in it. And then also, you have cars like the Prius, which I believe like the hood is made out of aluminum, which makes a lot of sense because it's a big piece of metal that you lift up by hand, and it isn't really a structural panel to the vehicle, so aluminum is great for that. So I'm gonna assume it does something like that, and we're gonna use a partial aluminum setup. Next up, we need to figure out what kind of chassis type this vehicle is, and thankfully there is a picture of the underside of the vehicle which makes it easy to figure out what it is. The first option we have available to us is the ladder chassis, and it is definitely not that, because the ladder looks literally like it has a ladder strapped to the underside of the vehicle, and I did not see that on the vehicle we're trying to clone. Then we have the monocoque, and yeah, that looks like what we're looking for, but just to be sure, let's look at the other options just in case. Space frame, completely different. Obviously not that. Semi-space frame, that looks like it could also be a valid option. So what we do is you look at the details. You'll notice on the semi-space frame in the front, there's really nothing here except for a couple of metal bars. And if we look at the picture, on the front over here, we still have the whole enclosure there, which to me makes me think it's just a normal monocoque chassis. And then the last option we have is the light truck monocoque. This isn't a truck and this doesn't look right, so monocoque it is. Then for the chassis material, once again here we're gonna have to do a little bit of guessing. Looking at the picture, we can see it looks like there's a mix of materials used on the chassis because the material here looks really different from the material over here. Now there is no mixed material option for the chassis, so we just gotta do our best guess. And since this car is coming out in 2020 and most modern cars are gonna use some form of AHS steel, that's what we're gonna pick. We could maybe choose light AHS steel as well, but it's a little bit less safe, and I feel like this car would probably prioritize the safety over the lightweightness, so that's why we're gonna use regular AHS steel. Also, AHS stands for Advanced High Strength Steel, I think. I'm like 80% sure that sounds right. I kind of just made it up in my head, but it sounds too good to be wrong. Next up, we need to figure out the engine placement, and we have a very helpful image that tells us that this is a front transverse engine configuration. You can tell because the pistons are aligned from left to right in the vehicle. If they were going from front to back, that would make it a longitudinal setup. Next, we go to the front suspension. And we can clearly see it's not a solid axle leaf or a solid axle coil because it doesn't have the solid axle that connects one wheel to the other in the screenshot. So we have two options available to us then. It's either a double wishbone or a McPherson strut. So we once again take a look at the underside of the vehicle, and there are two things to take note of. First, the shape of this part of the suspension, and then where the spring connects to the suspension. It looks like the spring might connect directly to the wheel hub. Now, if we go back to the game, a double wishbone setup has what appears to be a wishbone-like shape, which doesn't really look right. And then also, the spring connects to the wishbone. Now, McPherson strut, the spring connects directly to the wheel hub, and then also it has a big chunky piece of metal down below. That, to me, looks correct. Now we move on to the rear suspension, and once again, we can immediately rule out the solid axle options because the vehicle did not have a solid axle in the rear either. And here's the rear of the vehicle. And once again, we're going to take note of the shape of this piece here, and then also the location of all of these suspension pieces. You'll notice that they're kind of in line with the hubs of the wheels. And if we take a look at the semi-trailing arm configuration, you see that doesn't look right because all of the suspension parts are kind of moved up in front of the wheels. Then we have the torsion beam, which again is kind of the same idea. Everything's moved up and it's very, very simple looking back here. It did not look that simple when we were looking at it over there. Double wishbone. Now this looks promising, but again, double wishbone has a wishbone looking shape. I didn't see any sort of wishbone looking shape there. So next up is multi-link, which that looks promising. It looks like a complete mess, and that's exactly what we were looking at. But just to make sure, let's look at push rod, which is obviously not it because on the push rod, the springs are going from left to right instead of up and down. So it looks like a multi-link is the correct option. Now we move on to the engine. And what's the hardest part about making an engine? Giving it a good name. So instead of giving it a good name, we're going to give it a bad name. It's going to be called Frenchy Vroom Vroomer. Yes, that is the name of the engine. That's the engine model and everything. Speaking of name, I haven't given a name to the car. Haven't really thought about it and don't know what it's going to be. For the engine, we have a lot of options we can pick from. There's an inline 3, a bunch of inline 4s, some of which are diesel, an inline 5, and then an electric option. Out of all these options, the best one we can duplicate is going to be the inline 5 because that's probably the fastest version available. And then we need to figure out the block material. Now I'm thinking the block material is going to be aluminum because this picture of the engine is really, really shiny. Cast iron does not shine like that, but you know what does? Aluminum. And while we're here, we can take a look at the head on the vehicle. And looking at the top here, you see it's really big and wide and it has two circular shapes here. That to me makes me think that this engine is using a dual overhead cam setup. And then for the number of valves, that I could not figure out just by looking at pictures. So we're going to go with a 4-valve setup because that seems pretty common on like the higher end inline 5 engines that are used in vehicles. And plus it's a nice even number. So if you look at the top of the vehicle, it's a 20-valve, which sounds a lot nicer than something like a, what would this be, a 10-valve? It doesn't even get the number of valves on the top because nobody wants a 10-valve inline 5. Same goes for the number 5. It doesn't show it. I just like that it says 20-valve, like you're gloating, like, look at me and all my valves. I have more valves than a really bad V8 engine. And then for the head material, again, it was really shiny, just like the block, so it's going to be aluminum. And then, of course, it has variable valve lift because all modern engines have that kind of stuff because we need that good fuel economy. For the crank, conrods, and pistons, there is not much we can do. We can't see the internals of the engine, so we can't really guess on it. So what I'm doing is I'm putting in the cheapest parts we can, and I'll upgrade them if necessary. And for the compression, cam profile, and variable valve lift profile, all of that we will tune later on. We will go ahead and get the variable valve timing equipped now because, again, we need good fuel economy, and that helps us get it. We are going to put a turbocharger on the vehicle because I know the inline 5 has a turbocharger. How do I know? Because this video was posted with the vehicle, and in this video you can tell it has an inline 5 engine based on the sound because inline 5 engines have a really distinct sound. The only thing that sounds similar to them is a V10 engine, which is just two inline 5s smashed together. And you can tell it has a turbo because here's the turbo gauge and you can see it spool up as they drive. And while we watch this, you should also know the turbo is hitting 1.8 bars and the tachometer maxes out at 7,000 RPM. For the turbo type, I'm going to be giving it a ball bearing configuration just because I don't like messing with the journal bearings and automation because they spool up really slowly. Like it feels like a turbo from the 1980s and this is a car in the 2020s. And then for intercooler, I'm just going to put it a bunch. Like I'm thinking we might get maybe 400 horsepower out of this, so we're going to double it up to 800. For the compressor, turbine, AR ratio, we're going to put those all to the performance preset. And then like I said, it was hitting 1.8 bars of boost. Now the boost, I have it in PSI, and 1.8 bars equals about 26.2 PSI. That's as close as we can get it because of the way the little scroll bar here works. So then we go over to the fuel system. Now, obviously, it's not a carbureted engine. Carburetors are so not 2020s. Now, we do have a picture of the engine, but based on this picture, I cannot say for certain what kind of fuel system is in use. I can rule out some options, though. It's not going to be mechanical fuel injection because that's old school. We use computers in cars now. It's probably not going to be a single point EFI because, again, that's just a little bit old school. And then it even has, like, the really old circular air filter, which just doesn't even look right anymore. So then we have multi-point EFI and direct injection. Now, with the correct camera angle, I can tell which is which because it's all about where the fuel is injected into the engine. So with a multi-point EFI, it's injected right before the cylinder. With direct injection, it's directly injected into the cylinder. That's the difference. And in the picture we had, I just can't tell. Like, I want to say it might be multi-point EFI because it does have like some thick cables going to the top of the engine, and direct injection doesn't have that. But at the same time, how often do cars not use direct injection? It's becoming more and more common, and I feel like a car in 2020, more often than not, is going to have direct injection. And if you look really closely, there are still wires at the top of this thing. I don't know where they're supposed to be going, but there are wires there. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't really know how to identify this component of a vehicle outside of just looking at where the fuel is injected. So in this situation, what I do is I look at a similar engine in real life and see what that one did. For example, the 2.5 liter inline-5 engine used by Audi in cars like the TT RS and the RS3, that is a direct injection vehicle. It's also a 20 valve vehicle, and those two things combined make me say, you know what? Let's just use direct injection. Then we move on to the intake, and I feel like when we have 26 PSI of boost, we can go ahead and up for the performance intake because the standard one will probably choke out the boost a little too much. For the fuel type, we're going to give it Super 93. And I'm doing like what a lot of real cars do in real life, where they are tuned for the best fuel possible, and if they get worse fuel, they will automatically tune themselves down a little bit using the computers in the car to work with that kind of fuel. So this would be like the perfect configuration when it gets the perfect fuel, and when it doesn't, it'll be perfectly fine. This stuff we won't touch until later for fuel mixture and ignition timing. RPM limit, we saw that the vehicle can rev to 7,000, so we'll go ahead and increase the RPM limit to 7,000. For the headers, we don't have an option there. Exhaust, no option there. Bypass valve is something used more on high-end sports cars and supercars and such, so we're not going to have one of those. Exhaust diameter, I'm going to max this out for now and reduce it later on to make it a reasonable amount. Catalytic converter, I care about the environment. We're just going to give it the nicest one possible. Again, that's something we kind of have to guess on. Same goes for the type of muffler, probably. Like, I didn't actually look and see if you could tell the difference, but I don't know if you can actually visually tell the difference between a reverse flow and a baffled muffler just from looking at it. So I just gave it a reverse flow because those are the ones that make it nice and quiet in a reasonable vehicle. And right now we have a big problem. We have some knock. But before we get into really tuning the engine, I want to once again talk about the Audi engine I mentioned earlier. When it's used in a vehicle like the TTRS, it gets a combined 23 miles per gallon and about 400 horsepower. So that should be our goals. 23 miles per gallon and 400 horsepower means it's a reasonable 5-cylinder turbocharged engine for the situation it's being used in. Because if I don't have real world comparisons like this, I'll just accidentally make an engine that makes like 800 horsepower and sucks up gas like no tomorrow. So right now, the engine is knocking really, really bad. To fix that, we're just going to go ahead and increase the fuel mixture until the knocking stops and see what that does. So it's starting to get a little bit better, but we want it to be 0% on knocking. And we're now at 0%, but we got a new problem. The pistons, connecting rod, and crankshaft are all failing. Like I said, I put the cheapest ones in, and then we were going to upgrade them if necessary. The vehicle is making about 400 foot-pounds of torque. So yeah, the upgrades are necessary. We'll give it forged steel crankshaft, which is good for 531 foot-pounds of torque. For the connecting rods, we'll go ahead and give it the heavy-duty cast connecting rods. That's no good because it's still really, really bad once you rev past 6,000 RPM. So if we go to the heavy-duty forged, it can now do all the torque we need and all the revs we need. For the pistons, same deal. If we put those ones in, no good. If we get regular forged, we're good. So the internals should be good now. Now, what we really, really need to do is get this thing to be more fuel efficient. This number over here, the fuel efficiency, it doesn't actually mean what miles per gallon the vehicle is gonna get, because the miles per gallon also relies on like the transmission and how aerodynamic the vehicle is. But it is a good baseline to give you an idea of about what miles per gallon it'll get, it seems like. If it says 19, the vehicle will probably get about 9 miles per gallon. That means I want this number to be around 23. So the easiest way to improve fuel economy is to make the engine run leaner. So I'm gonna drop the fuel mixture 1:1 ratio. And now we have serious knocking. So how do we fix the serious knocking? We go over to the compression, and then we'll go ahead and just reduce the compression down until it stops knocking. Still knocking, but I want a little bit of room to work with for the turbo, so I'll bring it down one more than that. And then for the cam profile, we can increase the miles per gallon by reducing the cam profile, but I don't really want to go much lower than what's basically straight at the top of normal because this car is supposed to be a little bit sporty, so we'll stop there. For the variable valve lift profile though, this we can go ahead and bring up a lot because it'll help with the fuel economy eventually. Like you notice the fuel economy is going up and down and up and down, but generally it is going more and more as we raise it up. So it's at 22.8, 22.9, but here you really start to see the power of the engine is dropping off. So we don't want to go that far. So maybe we'll just stop at about 86. That seems like a decent number. And now for the turbos. We're going to once again take a look at the video we saw earlier, but this time we're going to have it play back at about a quarter of the speed it normally would. And what we want to do is we want to see at what point are the turbos fully spooled up. So we're going to watch the tachometer and then also watch the amount of boost at the same time. And once the amount of boost hits 1.8 bars, which is right there, we look at the tachometer. So it hits max boost at about 3,500 RPM. So we want to make sure our car also hits max boost at around 3,500 RPM to try to get the torque curve as close as I can to this vehicle. And right now it's already close to that, but we don't have the 400 horsepower target. We can't increase the boost to get there, so what we gotta do is we gotta mess around with the compressor size, the turbine size, and the air ratio. So we'll start off by increasing the air ratio a bunch, because if we increase this a bunch, it'll give us more top end, which will get us to the 400 horsepower. Unfortunately though, the miles per gallon has dropped to 22.2. I said we needed 23. So how can we fix that? Well, if we make the turbine smaller, it'll spool up a little bit faster, which should increase the miles per gallon as it's going up and down and up and down. That was because it was knocking or something, right? I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention, but we got 23 miles per gallon once again, so that should be good. We don't have 400 horsepower, though. How about we increase the compressor size a little bit, get a little bit more top end? There we go. 401 horsepower, 23.2 on the fuel efficiency. Power comes in at about 3,200 RPM. That is perfectly reasonable. I just didn't want it to be like peak power at like 4,000 because that's way too much. Coming out a little early is fine because in fact, I did round up a little bit on that video because I wasn't sure how low of the RPM we'll be able to actually get the peak power at or peak torque at. That's peak torque, isn't it? Yeah. Peak torque is nice and early. Peak power comes in all the way at the end, which means I probably could tune it where the peak power comes in a little bit earlier, but we might lose the nice 400, and I don't want to lose that 400. Do I? Nah. Let's see. We increase the compressor size a little bit, and then if we drop the ratio, yeah. The second we drop the ratio, the horsepower is dropping too, so we're not going to do that. We're at 23 miles per gallon even though, So nothing else I really want to touch there. I am perfectly happy with this engine. Oh, I forgot the exhaust. Oh no. All right, we can reduce the exhaust down until it starts to affect it. Yeah, so it's starting to affect it there. 7-inch exhaust. I don't care. That's the size of my exhaust. And speaking of size of things, the intercooler we can adjust to. Oh, it's making it lose power again. You know what? We love the tuning community. We give you a big intercooler that can support up to 800 horsepower. So you have companies that come in and they chip your car. They don't actually improve the cooling. We thought about that. We are a very generous company. That, and we don't want to go under 400 horsepower. We'll just drop the diameter until it's there. Perfect. 400 even. I like that. It's just a nice even number. Almost a nice number for the torque too at 376. If it was 1 foot-pound less, it would be beautiful. So that's the engine. Here's what it sounds like. You can see the compressor and the turbine don't allow quite enough airflow at the higher RPMs, but it's all right. It still makes the power at the higher RPMs, and the torque doesn't drop off a ton. Like, yeah, it does have some torque drop off, but that's perfectly acceptable, I would say. Now, we need to do the design of the vehicle, but we're not going to do that right now. In fact, we're not going to do anything else right now because this is going to be a 2-part video. In this first part, we designed the chassis and the engine. In the next part, we'll design the exterior and the suspension and drive it around a little bit in BeamNG.drive. So until next time, this has been WhyBeAre. And remember, if you like or dislike this video, I will know. I can tell by how long the wait is between one video I make and the next one. So do the right thing, and I'll see you next time.